All right, y'all, we are at 12:03, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I just hit record, so just so everyone knows, we do record these sessions, so if you have to bow out early, we will have these on our YouTube channel, typically by the end of the day. If you aren't comfortable being filmed, just slide your camera off, but for the most part, when Wendy's presenting, you won't be able to see any of us anyway, just at this point. So welcome to On the Menu. My name is Amanda Ronan, and I'm the Director of Programs for the Research Triangle Foundation. Really appreciate y'all being here today for On the Menu, making slides that make sense. This is a very tactical version of On the Menu. We do these each month, and they span all different industries, but the mission remains the same. It is helping small business entrepreneurs grow to their next level, whatever that next level may be. And in today's session, it'll be your presenting skills. Before I turn things over to Wendy, just a couple housekeeping. We will be monitoring the chat throughout. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in. I will interrupt Wendy and ask your question. Or if you want to hold your questions till the end, you can do that as well. We will leave some time at the end for question and answer. One thing I really like to do, especially since we are still virtual, is just to see where everyone's joining us from. So if everyone wouldn't mind, if you feel comfortable, taking a moment, toggle your mouse over your little box, and in the right-hand corner, you'll see 3 dots. Click on that, and you'll have the option to rename. Would love to know, of course, your name, but where you're joining from. I changed mine to Raleigh. I'm in Raleigh today, but would love to know where y'all are joining us from. As you do that, you should have received a handout from me earlier this morning. If anyone did not, just message me privately. I'll be sure to send that over to you by email. Zoom just updated their platform, and now they need my firstborn in order to have me upload a document. So not going to do that, but I will email it to you separately. So just let me know. With that, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our speaker today. Wendy Gates Corbett, CPTD, is an experienced international presenter, award-winning presentation consultant, and certified trainer who has helped hundreds of executives, speakers, coaches, consultants, business owners, and professional athletes become more clear, impactful speakers and presenters. As the president and chief presentation officer of Signature Presentations and a global training executive, Wendy has spoken for more than 150,000 people all over the world about building belonging, confidence, clarity, and powerful presence. Signature Presentations is proud to say that they've saved more than 10,000 slides from forgettable abyss.
And counting.
And counting, because today we've got a good group. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Wendy, and take it away.
Well, thank you, Amanda. I am thrilled to be with all of you today. I am on a mission to make sure that none of us have to sit through presentations that make us cringe. I don't like sitting in presentations myself where I'm cringing either because of the presenter or their slides or what they're saying. So I started my business 8 years ago yesterday to make sure that we don't have to do that anymore. So yes, I have counted, and the clicker, I got the little slide clicker, and it's at 10,000 plus slides so far. We're going to add to that today. So in addition to where you are, I invite you to send in chat what your role is at your organization. And I want to know what makes you cringe when you're in a meeting and somebody else's slides, if you don't want to talk about your own, what makes you cringe when you see it on presentation slides? I want to know what drives you bonkers. So I'm going to give you a moment to do that. Just send that to chat to everyone, please. And as you do that, I will tell you a little bit more about myself. So some of you know me. It's great to see some friends here. I am a professional speaker, as Amanda said. I'm also a corporate training executive. I spent about 20 years working with technology companies, running their client training programs. In the course of that career, I ended up spending days, weeks, and months in meetings with presentations with slides that I couldn't see. They confused the heck out of me, and they made me want to run away. So I did run away, and now I'm on a mission. I work with individuals and organizations, helping them prepare their message their delivery, and their slides. I can do all three of those things or any subset of those things with individuals and organizations. I also present a heck of a lot now virtually. I also help people present engagingly virtually. How's that for double adverbs? Here's the rundown of our time together. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of a brain lesson. I know we've got several medical professionals here, so you'll keep me on point with a really short lesson about how the brain works. And I'll tell you why we start with that. Then there are 7 what I call slide rules that you can apply to your slides to make them better. I'll show you examples of slides with the rules being broken, and then those same slides with the rules applied. I'll sneak in some time-saving tips and hacks. I'll come out of presenter view a bit, go behind the scenes in PowerPoint to show you how I've done a couple things. We'll wrap it up with questions. As Amanda said, she is monitoring chat and has free license to interrupt me as she sees fit to answer questions. And then we do have time at the end for questions and comments. All right, here's where we're going to start with a really short lesson about how the brain works. I start with this because we've all seen bad slides and they make us cringe. They make us pull out our phone or open up YouTube. But there's a reason why we do that. So for those of you who, it's not just marketing, it's not just a nice to have. There's neuroscience that says when slides and presentations are well designed, well delivered, that makes brains happy. And when we are presenting, we want to make brains happy. Here's why. Words are processed in the left frontal lobe and left temporal lobe and the prefrontal cortex, or here. Words are processed here in the brain. Numbers and images are processed in the occipital lobe, or over here. All right, you don't have to remember the lobes. The idea is that words are processed in some parts of the brain. Numbers and images are processed in other parts of the brain. So when we're presenting with presentation slides, our audience is hearing us and seeing us. And they're seeing slides. We're activating multiple parts of the brain. When those brains that are activated can easily process what it's seeing and hearing, can easily make sense of all of that, then we make those brains happy. And happy is good. Happy brains are influenceable. Happy brains stay in tune and continue to pay attention. Happy brains are changeable. On the flip side of that, we have activated these multiple parts of the brain. When those brains have to squint to see what that word says, or what that number is, or is that a picture of a dog or a cat, or they're not sure what part of the slide the presenter is talking about, then we have frustrated multiple parts of the brain. How influenceable are you when you are frustrated? So the goal here today is to show you how to create slides that make brains happy. Part 2 of our neuroscience lesson has to do with the cortex. The cortex is the largest part of the brain. It's kind of like command central. And just about 50% of the cortex is devoted to visual processing, to making sense of what it sees. So we have activated the largest part of the brain and almost half of the largest part of the brain. When we harness that power and make brains happy, then we have made those brains happy, influenceable, changeable. They will invest, they will buy, they will promote, they will make the kinds of changes we want them to make. When that 50% of the brain, the 50% of the cortex is frustrated, it's going to run away. And when brains run away, we can't continue to influence them the way we want to. That concludes our brain lesson. That's about as much as I know about the brain. So Amanda, I'm going to ask you to launch poll number 1, please. I've done a lot of consulting with folks about slides. It's really funny in networking events when people find out that one of the things I do is designing slides. They often say, oh, please don't look at my slides. Or they say, I really wanted to have better quality slides, but, and then these are the top 3 responses that I see. And I'm curious which one fits you. I will also say that I'm using the term PowerPoint. I'm using PowerPoint, but the slide rules I'm demonstrating are true for any tool you use to create your slides. So if you use Google Slides, fine. You use Keynote, fine. I'm using PowerPoint, but the rules still apply regardless of the application. Yeah, I don't have enough time. I ain't got the right skills. I don't have a master's degree in PowerPoint, which as far as I know is not a real master's degree yet. Yeah. Good. So these are, should be seeing the results. This is pretty typical. These are our common answers. You may have another way to complete the phrase, but these are the most common ones. Because these are the most common responses, common ways to complete that sentence. The slide rules that you're going to learn today are intentionally simple. They don't take more time. They are based on skills you already have. All right, you do not need a master's degree in PowerPoint or Google Slides to make these rules happen. They're intentionally simple, intentionally not rocket science, intentionally not medical science. Here are the rules. And let's see if I can clear out. Amanda, would you, if you can you clean that the whiteboard, the annotation, please? Here are the rules. Let's jump in with rule number 1. The first rule has to do with the amount of content on a slide. And it has to do with specifically how many ideas we refer to on a single slide. I want you to imagine that you're about to go buy furniture. All right, you're in the market for a new couch. Imagine going to IKEA. Great selection, but some are going to love that selection, but many of us are going to be overwhelmed at the number of choices. We will be to the point where we are paralyzed and unable to move forward. We run away. When we address multiple ideas, multiple messages on a single slide, we are overwhelming our audience's brains. So here's an example. The rule here is the key number is 1. That means 1 message per slide. All right, that 1 message might have multiple parts, but it is 1 key message. Here's an example of this rule being broken. This particular slide, don't worry about the content of it. The idea here is we're talking about the components of internal controls. There are 5 components, and then it goes into detail about one of the components. So this slide actually has 2 messages. It has the fact that there are 5 components of internal controls, and then of one of these components, here are the nitty-gritty details. That's 2 messages. So your brains, if you're going to track with me, your brains have to change lanes. You have to shift and you've got to flow with me, and you're not prepared to do that. It's easier for you to do that when we break it up into 2. So the first is that the first slide would say, here are the 5 components of internal controls. By the way, I added the number 5 to the slide title because the audience, our brains love numbers. Our brains particularly love numbers between 1 and 10, particularly if they're odd. So 5 is a great number. Your brain's going, yeah, I can handle 5. Then when we get to the fourth component of internal controls, that's when we get into the nitty-gritty. But we don't get into the nitty-gritty on this slide. We break this out into a slide all of itself. All right. Now, the bullet points are a whole other story. That's another rule. But still, you are tracking with me. We've gone from the 5 components of internal controls to the 4th component. These are the details about the 4th component of internal controls. Rule number 2, particularly the more passionate we are about a topic, the more we tend, myself included, the more we tend to want to share all of our knowledge and our passion with our audience because they need to know it too. We tend to put it all on one slide though, or 2 slides if we're lucky. Imagine if you walked into an office like this. How would you feel? You can respond in chat or verbally. What's your visceral reaction? Yikes. Yeah, stressed. You want to run away. Eek. Love all these sound effects. Yes, you're overwhelmed. You want to run away. You are stressed. What if you walked into an office like this? That's Miranda's office. Or maybe it's Bob's. What kind of reaction do you have? Ah, calm, cold for some, ready. Yes, very different reaction than this one. It's the same with slides. When slides are overloaded, even if the content is great, even if those folders are stuffed with Publishers Clearinghouse winning lottery tickets, it's still overwhelming. When slides are overstuffed with any kind of content, our audience is overwhelmed. They are stressed. They go, eek, yikes, and they want to run away. But when everything on a slide has its place, when everything has breathing room, then our audience has that same reaction, has the, they are ready to absorb. They feel calm. They feel prepared. That's what we want to do with our slides. So for example, this is a great corporate kind of example. I see a lot of this. One of the things that I do when I work with organizations and their existing slides is I look for, when we're working with a deck, I look for what can be removed from a slide without changing the meaning of the slide, as long as it's one key message. What can we remove to make the message clearer? How can we declutter? So what do you notice that's redundant on this slide? And you can respond verbally or in chat. What do you think we can get rid of? Yeah, the title's redundant. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I look for redundancy. So a lot of we, yes, there is a whole lot of we going on, Claire. So I noticed that in the image and in the slide title, they were completely redundant. So got rid of the slide title. There's still a lot going on in this slide. What else could we get rid of on this slide? The world graphic, yes. The black text, exactly, Lydia. Yes, the descriptions, exactly. What I would do on this slide is use this slide to introduce, these are the 5 components of leadership expectations that we're going to talk about today. Keep it at that level. Then when we're ready to talk about setting direction, then on the next slide, we add that description and we get into more detail about what setting direction looks like. All right, so that is more is not better on a single slide. What you have to share with your audience is amazing. It is important. Use more slides to convey your message so that your audience's brains go, thank you. Yes, we can see how important and passionate what you're presenting is. That's rule number 2. Rule number 3 sounds a lot like rule number 1, but it's a little different. And that is the number is few. This means the number of objects on a screen, on a slide, or the appearance of how many objects are on a slide. The fewer objects on the slide, the more cohesive the slide elements are, the easier it is for your audience's brains to process them. And that makes those brains happy. So for example, you're seeing the slide title, you're seeing 3 stamp size pictures, and you're seeing a bulleted list. Right now, your eyes are darting around the slide, taking in all of this visual cues and figuring out how they are all related. An alternative is to make the images bigger and create a single continuous list. Now it looks like there are fewer things and your eyes have to dart around the slide less to make sense of what you're seeing. Here's another example. This is a great investor deck for really important medical stuff. But there are, how many different objects are you seeing on the slide? Your eyes are seeing the slide title, that purple section across the top. Of course, I love the purple. You're seeing the box, the solution box. You're seeing the bullet point list. Yeah, there's not a hierarchy. Your eyes are seeing one object, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you're seeing multiple objects. Where all I did is I removed the box, the outline from solution 2 up top. I removed the shading from the bulleted list. I also, just to use space better, I moved the icons towards the bottom and spread stuff out so that, in this case, I removed the shading and the outline to make it appear like there are fewer objects on the screen. All of these objects are more related now. It's a step towards making this slide, the powerful message on this slide, easier to process and absorb. Here's another example. Now, this is smart art. And I appreciate that PowerPoint's trying to help make it easier for you to organize stuff and to evenly space content and to visualize some of your content. Sometimes they do all right, and many times they don't. This now sees, I think there are 7 items in this list. Your brain is now seeing 7 items on this list. You're seeing 7 different objects, and then the information over on the right. That's a whole other object. What we might do instead of having each individual item on this list shaded, create one shade behind it, one single object. Now you're seeing this as a single list. And this is a very simple way to organize content. Add some shading if you want to use the shading, but create a single object for your audience's brains to have to process instead of multiple. I see this a lot with lists like this one. Here's another one. And instead of having a list with bullet points, I love this numbered list because it falls into the number between 1 and 10. Love that. Love the use of bolding to create hierarchy. However, your eyes are still seeing the number 1 as one item and the bullet point below it as a separate item. Same thing with 2, you're seeing this as an item or object and the bullet point below it as an object. Pause. What does simplified jargon make you think of right now? Respond verbally or in chat. And you see blue underlined text. What comes to mind for you? Yeah, hyperlink. That's right. So unless that's a hyperlink, I would steer away from using underlines. Certainly steer away from using the hyperlink blue and steer away from using underlining as a formatting tool in your slides. unless it is a hyperlink and unless you're going to click that hyperlink. So because right now your minds are thinking, ooh, is that a hyperlink? I wonder where it goes. And if I click on it, then you're happy. But if it's not a hyperlink, or if I skip it, then you're thinking, wait, what about that hyperlink? Where is that supposed to go? All of that's distracting you from my message. So instead of this, I made this editable. I went with a table, another option. Now your eyes are seeing all of this as one object. And all of number 2, be concise, about 30 seconds. And here's the point to make with the blue underlining. I noticed between these two, this is the border of the table is black border. That's a little harsh. I can make it more subtle, make it appear a little subtler just by changing the color of the border. Very simple thing to do is when you have a bulleted list, to see if you can turn it into a table. That's a preview of another rule coming up. Rule number 4 is related to the words that remain on your slides. And the idea is whether you're trying to convince your potential investors, or trying to sell a product or sell yourself, that promotion that you deserve. The words that do stay on slides can be more powerful and impactful when they are at the beginning of whatever your word blurbs are. So for example, we've got the typical corporate speak, the wah, 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 wah. Instead of the Charlie Brown teacher, fluffy kind of words, use a grabby or action word at the beginning of the sentence or the phrase. In fact, I should say phrase, because another bonus rule, I aim to not use complete sentences on slides. It's another way to reduce the amount of stuff on slides by using key phrases instead of full sentences, unless you're quoting someone. So instead of cost minimization strategies, that really means that we are reducing costs. So this is an agenda from secrets from one of the presentations that I do, and I aim to make the grabbier, strong, provocative words at the beginning of, in this case, it's not rules, it's secrets. If you're presenting numbers, particularly if those numbers are powerful, and create your phrases or word blurbs, your text blurbs with the numbers big and bold. So I want to give a shout out for those of you who did donate your slides. I want to thank you, because it is so much more impactful when you can see your own slides see what's possible with them. One of the things I love when I get slide donations is that I often see examples of slides that are already following the rules. So I want to highlight some of those as well. And this is one of them. I love the word, which word on the slide jumped out at you? I'll tell you which one. I could read Miranda's, yeah, dumb, that's great. How often do we see dumb on a slide as opposed to intelligent? I love it. Perfect example. So aim to use grabby words. I also, you'll see a couple of other examples, and it's ironic that couple slides are related to building resumes. Very similar approach to using grabby, provocative action words on resumes as well as slides. Rule number 5, from the slides that I saw, y'all are presenting lots of data, and that's a good thing. Your data can be incredibly powerful in helping you make your point, whether it's investing, buying, selling, promoting, or other kinds of behavior change. A lot of data can overwhelm your audience though. So this rule is to help your audience process the data in a way that makes sense for them and does not overwhelm them, doesn't make isn't chaotic for them to process. So for example, start with a really simple example. Let's say we were going to talk about, this is 3 months worth of training and 3 different training programs. 3 months of results, 3 different training programs. Eventually, we're going to talk about all of this, but in what way might we talk about this data? What's one option for how we might talk about this data, how we might walk through it? Yeah, month by month. So we might look at it, might look at all of the January classes, and we might then transition to looking at all of the February classes. Or, that's right, we don't know what the goals were, so we don't know whether they were exceeded or not. Or we might look at this in terms of each class. You don't know. So if I start talking about the peak performance classes, right now, your eyes have to look at the legend to see which ones are the peak performance classes, what color is peak performance. Then you have to look at each month and evaluate the data, all of that while I am talking about the data, and you're missing all the great stuff I'm saying. Now, when I start talking about peak performance, if by chance you looked down because you were taking notes, you look back up at the slide, now you can easily see which course we're talking about, or in what way we are talking about this data. What I did here is one of my favorite and simple tools to use in PowerPoint or in slide design. And that is using a rectangle that is partially transparent. And I will show you how I did that. Thumbs up if you're seeing a normal view of PowerPoint. All right, thank you. So what I did is I inserted a rectangle. Then I made that rectangle white. I'm going to put a border or an outline around it just so you can see it. And then so that you can still see the other courses, the red and the green bars, but they're not fully visible. What I did is I made the shape semi-transparent, or I added a bit of transparency to it. And the way to do that is from the shape fill menu, go down to more colors, more fill colors, and that brings up the color palette, big, beautiful honeycomb. At the bottom of this, of the honeycomb, of the color palette is a transparency slider. I'm going to make this 30% transparent. And now you can see that you can see a bit behind it, but still your eye is drawn to the blue. So there might be times where I don't want it any kind of transparent. I want to completely hide the data. That's doable. But there are times when I want you to see that this is the big picture, but right now we're focusing on this part of the big picture. All right, here is another example. This, I bet, is a slide that makes you want to run away. When it comes to pie charts, when you're presenting data this way, particularly in this case, this was a Wake County Commissioners meeting, and they were comparing the high schools and the health clinics. And right now you're diving into if I haven't lost you yet, you are diving into one of the pies and looking for health clinics. What color is health clinics? You've found the health clinic pie slice on the left. Now you're diving into the pie on the right and looking for health clinics, and you're going back and forth. All right, now you're going to HS. What is HS? So rather than doing that, I have sent you on a wild goose chase. While you are on that goose chase, you are not listening to me. So when you want to compare data, particularly whether it's over time or not, pie charts are not good ways to compare. This is a simple table, and I have drawn your eye to the parts, the areas that the numbers that I want you to look at. Made it easy for you. Same goes for line charts. If I wanted to talk about the huge impact that product number 4 had on our growth over the last 30 years, right now, if I haven't lost you, you are looking at the legend to see which color line is product number 4, and then you're diving into the lines, into the chart to see which line you're supposed to process. When it comes to line charts, you are likely going to talk about 1 or 2 of the data points at a time. When you're using color to highlight your audience's attention, remove the color that's not relevant. So we will go from this to this. So now, even if you look down to take some notes, when you come back, when you look back up at the slide, you can easily see which product I'm talking about. By the way, this is another bonus. Notice that I moved from here to here. I moved the legend from the bottom to the side. When we're presenting virtually, this isn't as big of a deal. But when we are presenting in person, especially if we are not just all sitting around a conference table, if we are sitting in rows and there's someone sitting in front of you, if our audience is sitting in rows, I aim to not put important information at the bottom of the slide, because you know when somebody's sitting in front of you, you can't see the bottom of the slide. You don't know which was product number 4. All of that creates frustration. So when we are presenting in person, it's more important to make sure that your audience can see everything they need to make sense of what you're talking about, which means avoid putting really important stuff at the bottom of the slide. Not as big a deal when we're talking about presenting virtually. Rule number 6 is similar to rule number 5, but it also includes data, but it also goes beyond data. The idea is when your slides have more than one object on them, or more than one element on them, you're likely going to talk about one element, 1 or 2 elements at a time. And you want to make it easy for your audience to know which element or which object you're talking about. So this is an example. This is another application of removing color. I call this decoloring. This is along the same lines as taking another approach to the rectangle, the semi-transparent rectangle. Another way to make it easy for your audience to see is to change the font formatting, to make bigger and bolder what it is you want to draw their eyes to. So where am I trying to draw your eyes? What flavor ice cream and what seasons? Yeah, why I have pistachio as purple, I don't know. But yeah, summer and spring and pistachio, rather than if you had to figure out summer and spring pistachio here. All right, and the same is true when it comes to numbers. Somebody mentioned before, we didn't know what the goals were. Yeah, when you are talking about numbers on a slide, when you want, particularly if you want to compare, make it easy for your audience to see those numbers by drawing attention to them. Here's another way that we draw attention. I use this in agendas, whether it's a program agenda or a meeting agenda. This is an example of a program agenda. These are the 4 topics that we address this is Slide School, one of the programs that I do. By removing the color from the slide, not totally hiding them. I call this breadcrumbs. Is the concept of you are here. Now you know that we are talking about, you know where we are in our program, because I've removed the color from the agenda topics that we've already addressed, that we are not addressing. I did the same thing here using that dotted line. I visually focused your attention to show you which section we are talking about. There are lots of ways to focus your audience's visual attention, and I've shared a couple of them with you. Rule number 7 has to do with bullet points. I'm seeing some facial expressions here. I will tell you that when I first created this rule, the rule was lose the bullet points. And that did not make brains happy. That frustrated brains, that made people want to run away, because particularly in many corporate environments and in individual environments, we have a thing about our bullet points. So I changed the rule to be a little more open. The idea is to limit the number of slides that you have with bullet points, because in part, because bullet points are just like default now. They are so default. I call them sleeping pills now, because the typical default bullet points in PowerPoint or Google Slides are just so boring. There are 3 things you can do instead of the dull, boring default bullet points. One is, depending on the size of your list, instead of having a vertical list, go horizontal. So display your list horizontally. For example, in one of the programs that I have, this is essentially what an agenda is, an agenda for one of my programs. What I do when I aim to go horizontal is I look at each of the bullet points, each of the blurbs, and I identify what the gist of that blurb is. So in this case, what's now highlighted is essentially, those are the main points of each of the blurbs. So instead of having all of those words and dull, boring bullet points, one very simple thing we could do is go horizontal. I'll show you another option. You've seen me go from the vertical list horizontal in this way. It's essentially a list that's gone horizontal. I mentioned that when you donate slides, I love to show examples of some slides that are applying the rule. This is one of them. You've gone horizontal. Kudos to you, high five to you. Instead of listing these horizontally in a typical default bulleted list, you've gone horizontal. Another strategy is taking horizontal a step further, is using icons. PowerPoint and Google, and I think Keynote as well, all are adding to their icon libraries. You can certainly go outside, tons of sources for icons, but for those of you using PowerPoint, Office 365, they are adding to their icon library, like, I don't know that it's monthly, but really frequently. They are really beefing up their icon choices. This is an example of icon choices. Again, kudos to you. One of the easiest things to do to get rid of bullet points is, if you do nothing else, the bullet point icon, the bullet point button on the keyboard, in the toolbar is pressed. The easiest thing you can do is click it again and make the bullet points disappear. Keep the list vertical, but get rid of the bullet points. Here's an example of that already done. Kudos to you. This on the lower right-hand side, that's a list of what's included, what sections might be included. Here's a list. This is a really easy thing to follow, particularly when you have a list where all of the text is a single line. So I'm not coming out of presenter view. The easiest thing to do is to get rid of the bullet points. That's the simplest thing to do. Here is a bonus tip. All right, so here is a list of bullet points, particularly when you're in marketing, when you're doing a marketing or sales presentation, or in training. Instead of having a bulleted list like this, you can change it from a list of common errors, a bulleted list of common errors, to a numbered list of common errors. Change your bullet points to numbers. That won't always be applicable, but ask yourself if it can be. So here's getting rid of the bullet points. There may be slides that do need bullet points. That's okay. What I want you to do is ask yourself, is there something I can do besides bullet points? You might be able to go horizontal. You might be able to find icons to represent your message. You might be able to just get rid of them. And in some cases, you might not be able to, but ask yourself so that you'll end up with fewer slides that have bullet points on them. All right, these are the 7 rules. The number is 1. That slide rule means focus on having one key message per slide. Slide rule number 2, more is not better. Your content is awesome. It's amazing. It deserves to shine. It deserves to be processable by your audience's brains. So use more slides, not more content on a single slide. More content on a single slide is not better. Rule number 3 is the number is few. That is aim to at least make it appear that there are fewer objects on the slide by removing outlines, shape outlines, and shading to make it appear that there are fewer items. Rule number 4, start strong. That's the word blurbs that appear on your slides. Use strong, grabby, provocative, active words to make those word blurbs have their impact. Rule number 5, when you're presenting numbers or data, don't dump that data on your audience all at once. Visually focus their attention on the data points you're talking about while you're talking about them. Rule number 6, draw their attention. Data slides and non-data slides. Do something to visually draw your audience's eyes to the part of the slide that you're talking about. Whether it's an arrow or formatting the font differently, adding a rectangle or some other kind of shape to visually draw their eye to where you're talking about. And the last rule, rule number 7, limit the number of slides that you have with bullet points. Ask yourself whether there is another way besides a bulleted list that you can present the information. The answer might be no, but at least you've asked yourself and you've started to step away from defaulting to bullet points.
Hey, Wendy, we have a couple questions.
Great, great. Perfect.
Lydia
timing.
wants to know what your thoughts are about including a company logo on every slide.
I have a rule called lose the logo as well. In my personal opinion, when you are presenting, I believe that you are your logo. As soon as you start presenting, you are your company's logo. So my rule is to have your company logo on the first slide and on the last slide. But my point is from the time you start presenting, you are representing your company. Now I know that there are, if you're in a pitch, in a pitch situation, there are multiple people, multiple organizations pitching. It can be important to have your logo on every slide. If you do need to have a logo on every slide, make it more subtle on slides where possible. So I also, particularly if you're in a company and you are doing an internal presentation, why do you need a logo when you are presenting internally? Everybody knows where you work and it's taking up precious space and it's cluttering your slides. And it breaks the more is not better rule.
Great. And the second question she has is, it seems like consistency from slide to slide, like every slide's having a header, consistent text, size, placement should be discarded to make each slide better as a standalone slide, rather than trying to make them match. Would you agree? There
is a delicate balance there. You don't want You do want it to be clearly a consistent look. I do aim to keep the text size as visible as possible and as consistent as possible. However, like on the slide where I had the 50% turnover, that number was intentionally big. So I agree, there are some nuances there that lead to personal balances between consistency and taking a per slide approach.
Awesome. And one more question,
yeah.
And this is from Greenwell. He asks, what's the best background for a slide?
I aim to, first of all, you can see from my own slides that I personally do not use a slide with a white background. And that is because there's research that shows that stark white can put eye strain, can create eye strain. So there may be some slides that I have that have a white background, but for me, my own slides that I design, I steer away from a white background. You want there to be contrast. If you have a dark background like I use, then you want the font to be white. If you have a lighter background, you want the font to be dark. You want there to be really strong contrast so people don't have to squint to figure out what the words or numbers are. I personally, I use a textured background. My intention with this texture was to be a little bit of texture without being distracting. I think I accomplished that, but all of you have your own reaction to that. So I aim to have a background that is not solid white. And personally, I aim for a little bit of texture, a little bit of something going on back there without being distracting. All right, I see Chloe's question. I'm going to ask, Amanda, if you would pull up the second poll. I am curious of the rules that you saw today, which one rule you think could have the biggest impact on your slides? And Chloe, I will answer your question. I love the split here. This is a great distribution. And it's common. What I love about it is that, all of you are seeing one that can make a big difference. You don't have to apply all 7 of these rules in order for your slides to look better. You saw in some of the before and after examples, you saw that a slide where I was applying rule number 1 broke rule number 2. So, but still the slide was improved. So I want you to know that you don't have to apply every single one of these rules to every single presentation you're ever doing in the future in order to make a big impact. Chloe, I see your question about tips on creating a presentation more quickly. I have 2 suggestions for you. One is the idea of creating what I call a super deck. And that is like, I do this presentation. This presentation is 7 rules for making your slides make more sense. This is anytime I do this presentation, I choose 7 rules based on the audience. But if you look actually, I made a copy of this one. This deck may actually have way more slides than the ones that I actually present. So using hidden slides is a way to, instead of saying, oh, where did I use that slide? What presentation was that? And the wild goose chase, you go off chasing, trying to figure out opening slide deck over here and over here and over here and over here, looking for that slide. Creating a super deck or a master deck for a particular topic can make it much easier for you to manage your slides. Another thing I do is what's called a PowerPoint toolkit. This is a very personal thing. And the idea is it is a slide deck that has elements that you use in slides often, but that take a little bit of time to create. So, and this is sort of keeping stuff in your back pocket. What I've done is I have my own personal PowerPoint toolkit. When I go to the open menu in PowerPoint, here is my toolkit right here. This is a list of presentations that I've opened recently. This list is going to change, but this slide deck is always going to be right here. It's quick, easy access. I don't have to remember where it is stored. What's in this is a living deck. I add to it all the time. I try to get away from always using just the typical boring question marks. But I can never remember which font it is that does the cool ones that I like. So I've added them here. These are the ones I like. Same thing with quotes. Another way to present data is of the 100 people we surveyed, 75%. These are all just individual icons rather than me creating a row of 20, 5 rows of 20 that are evenly distributed. Rather than me taking the time to do that every single time, this is 100 people. I can copy and paste it into my slide deck. Same kind of thing with getting a little bit artsy with calendars. All right, this is a table of calendars. How often, do we have to present a schedule? The months don't ever change. They're always going to be in that order rather than me creating a table that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows and typing January, February, blah. Rather than doing all of that, here's an example of where you might use a calendar. I've created this toolkit. Hey, this should look familiar. I do the little name tags. I change the color of the name tag based on, by the way, look, this is actually just a PowerPoint shape. Really, this is about the extent of my graphic design experience. Is mushing 2 shapes together to look like a name tag. So this is a PowerPoint toolkit. This is stored on. It happens to be on my desktop, but I don't have to remember where it is. I can come in here, copy what I need, and paste it into my deck. It'll help me. It helps create stuff much faster.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wendy. We
You're
are right at
welcome.
1 o'clock. So just in the interest of everyone's times and schedules, I just wanted to quickly thank everyone for coming. Thank you, Wendy, for your insight. Thank you, everyone, for being so much participation today. It was great to see everyone up in the chat. We'll hang out for a few more minutes if you have any more questions for Wendy, but we'll be back next month. Our topic next month is customer service for developers. So something a little more specialized. So if you are in the developer field and want to brush up the customer service piece of your job, please join us. And I appreciate y'all for being here. Thank you again, Wendy.
Yes, thank you. I do see somebody asked a question about one of the specific slides with the purple banner. Hang on. Lydia, if you hang tight, I will answer that question if you can. All right. Awesome. And if you are still around, on the handout there, I also added some of my biggest time savers. One of them was the toolkit, personal slide toolkit that I just demonstrated. Just some other stuff for you there. So
that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. All right, I'm going to come out of sharing. Lydia, I want to get to the slide that you were talking about.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Oh, it was down there. Oh, you think you have a couple times. 70.
70?
Yep.
Okay.
So when you
Pictures.
yeah, when you animated the text going across, are these just stacked text boxes or?
Yep.
Okay.
There's one text box.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. That's what I thought, but I've never done it that way. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right.
Thank you so much. This was super helpful. Thanks, Amanda, for always planning. Awesome.
You're welcome, Lydia. I'm so glad you came and found it helpful.